So what I really like about financial ratio analysis is it's like a mystery novel. You got to use all this information to try and figure out what's going on in this place. And that's why the case next week is actually one of my favorite cases as well. We'll see whether you feel the same way. The debt management ratios. These are ratios, sorry.
Sorry, a quick question on the last slide.
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely understand that it could be due to accounts receivable. But my other question with that is, could it also be because you have a really high depreciation? Like, does depreciation go into the current ratio even though it's a contra asset? It doesn't.
No. If you look on slide 6, their current assets are cash, short-term investments, accounts receivable, and inventories. So but you raise a good point. Another reason, in addition to accounts receivable, it could be inventories on the numerator that could account for the real difference. So the debt management ratios essentially are trying to give us information about the capital structure and whether there's the right mix of debt and equity. So the debt ratio is simply taking the total amount of debt over total assets, which is 29%. So interpret that in words. What does that 29% mean?
For every dollar in assets, 29% or 29 cents is funded through debt.
Yes, or another way of saying it is, out of all our total assets, 29% of it has been financed with debt, which means that 71% of it has been financed with equity. The times interest earned ratio, EBIT divided by interest expense, and there are different ways of, different versions of this ratio, so sometimes you'll see it slightly different, but for Kopensky's book, this is the way it is. And it's calculated to be 6.6 times. So what does that mean, the 6.6?
EBIT's like operating income, right?
Earnings before interest and taxes.
So basically your EBIT can cover your interest expense, 6.6 times.
Exactly. So you have the amount of your earnings, you can meet your interest expense 6.6 times. This is extreme interest to whom? This ratio. People you are borrowing from. They want to know, are they going to be paid or not? So there's a table. What does that table tell you?
Debt ratio is total.
So the debt ratio has gone down. Times interest earned has gone up. So what does this tell you? What story does this tell you as managers?
Your reliance on debt has gone down over the previous year, and your ability to pay off interest has gone up.
Yeah, and when compared to the industry?
They're above it, so they have a better ability to pay off their interest.
Okay, so what implications does this have for you as managers? What can you do with that information?
Take it to, if you needed to borrow more money, you might be able to get a better rate.
Exactly.
Sure.
Not just a better rate, but also you will be able to borrow at all. What this tells you is that this organization has capacity to take on more debt. It's got relatively less debt compared to the industry. It's got relatively better ability to service the debt compared to the industry. So this tells you as managers that maybe we can borrow some. If we need to, we have the ability to do so. And then finally are the asset management ratios. And these are simply taking total revenue over net fixed assets and total assets. I do not like these ratios. And I do not like them because of the denominator. And why do I say that? Can anyone think? how do accountants record assets? Josh?
Well, I know it's different in the fact they only look at actual money coming in and out, right?
But when an organization buys an automobile, it carries it on its balance sheet as an asset. What number gets put on the balance sheet?
The original price.
The original price. Okay, so why don't I like these ratios?
Because it doesn't reflect the market price, and it can give you a false picture of what you might be able to do with those assets.
Right, so if you've got really old assets that were bought a long time ago, how will these ratios look?
Better than average.
Wonderful. There is a healthcare organization on the island of Manhattan. The land was given to the organization 200 years ago for $1. Something tells me that a few acres in Manhattan is worth more than $1. But that's the value that the land is carried on the books at. That's why I don't like these ratios. However, they are useful if you've got relatively new organizations. If your organization's 10 years, the building's 10 years old, and you've got some comparators that are 5, 10, 15 years old, it's probably not a bad comparison. But you just have to be careful in how they're used. Average collection period. Net patients' accounts receivable divided by net patient service revenue divided by 365. Interpret the 73.4 in words.
Patients typically pay you back within 73.4 days.
Yes, I'll modify. Sorry?
They pay you back on average 73.4 days.
Okay, it's not just the patients, but also
You pay your
everybody. What it means is that this organization, on average, it takes them 73.4 days to collect their money. So from the day of discharge to the time they get their money is 73.4 days. So why don't we just look at the bottom row, the average collection period. What does that tell you? Sorry?
Improving, but still not close to the average.
They're improving, but they're not. Okay, so why do you say they're improving?
Because they do more information and government.
Right. Okay, so this is an example of a ratio where smaller is better. I mean, when we talk about profit, better is more is better. But in terms of average collection period, less is better. You're collecting your money faster. You're getting money deposited in your bank account faster. So what would this tell you as managers? What would you do with this piece of information? Sorry?
Probably look at your collection practices.
Yeah, you probably want to do some revenue cycle work. Look at your collection practices. Are you depositing money as fast as possible? We now have a new service that we're using at Piedmont where literally a van goes around to our clinics, collects all the money, cash that was collected during the day from patients, and they read it, they put it in a machine, and the machine reads it all, and it beams that amount to our bank account. That's how fast we're collecting. That's how fast the money gets transferred into the bank account these days. So those are the typical kinds of financial analysis. Now, DuPont analysis, I usually skip over this, but in fact, I left it in because by happenstance, a consultant from someone from a large consulting organization phoned me last week who said and talked to me about that they're going to start publishing DuPont numbers for hospitals. So I thought this was not used, but I would think it seems like it's making a bit of a comeback. So essentially what the DuPont analysis is, it's the product of three different ratios: total margin, total asset turnover, and equity multiplier, how much debt's used. Essentially, they're measuring three different things: expense control, asset utilization, and debt utilization. So the total margin is net income over revenue. You can see here are all the different ratios, the formula for them. In fact, when you do all the cancellations, it's really return on equity. But it's really breaking down return on equity into three different ratios, sub-ratios, as it were. Other analytical techniques which you will see sometimes, not all that common, not all that frequently, is common size analysis and percentage change analysis. And common size analysis, essentially all we do is we express all of our financial numbers in percentages instead of the absolute numbers. And that allows you to say, well, last year we got 42% of our revenue from Blue Cross. The year before it was 38%. So Blue Cross has increased as a proportion of the revenue, as a source of the revenue that we get. So it's just an interesting way to look at it. Percentage change analysis simply tells you how much did each item change on a percentage basis.